the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored.
Well, I think that it shows the vindication that he's innocent. We believe that this prosecution should never have taken place. Indeed, it came as a surprise because I had quite forgotten about the appeal. This appeal was made quite a long time ago when they filed a no-case petition before the court, and the High Court, rejected it, and so they went up to appeal. So apparently it's been before the appeal court for quite a long time. So it came as quite a pleasant surprise. But it shows that we still have justice in this country, and that we can work to make the judiciary what we want it to be.
Well, we have seen the AG really indicate that this is a perversion of justice in the interest of public accountability. One, if you were his appointer, what would you have advised him to do at this stage?
Well, I think that this Attorney General has been discredited enough. Anywhere in the world, with the things we've seen and the coaching of witnesses and discussion with witnesses, this prosecution would have been struck out as malicious prosecution. I believe this prosecution is malicious. He is not as, robust and energetic in pursuing cases that are occurring. Even just as we're talking, there's an ambulance case involving this present administration, which is hugely larger than what he's prosecuting, and yet he has no interest in that. He is like a legal representative of the MPP party, over-enthusiastic in pursuing political opponents. I've said that when we come, it will be the reverse. We will pursue accountability for the regime that has gone out. But at the same time, if any of our people are involved in the same things that have happened for which we're prosecuting the opposition, we would, the previous government would prosecute them too. And so I think that the Attorney General is also the Minister of Justice. He forgets that. He thinks that he's just the Attorney General. The Minister of Justice is supposed to ensure fairness. Anywhere else in this world, this case would have been, he would never even have come to court, not to talk about talking with witnesses, having conversations with witnesses and trying to tell them what to do. Yeah, this case should have truncated long ago.
The critics of yourself and the NDC say that you have suddenly found your voice in reposing some sort of confidence in the judiciary. What's your reaction to this as well?
No, not that we've suddenly found our voice. I do think that despite the issues we have with the judiciary, there are judges who are fair-minded. We're not talking about all judges. In some cases, we criticize judgments. I mean, for instance, to say that your birth certificate cannot be a proof of your identity as a citizen. I don't agree with that judgment. But they pronounce it, and we've abided by it. We sent an election petition, we're thrown out. I said, I respect the judgment of the courts. So we've always respected the judgment of the courts. As president, I can say that I never, ever once interfered in the administration of justice. Justice. Judges are called and told what decisions to take and all that. I do think that we gave judges tenure, security of tenure, so that they can be fair-minded in what they do. And I'm prepared to work with the judiciary to create the kind of judiciary we deserve. the judiciary is the last arbiter in all the three arms of government when it comes to any dispute. And the judiciary creates an environment for investors to come. If investors believe that they can get a fair hearing in case of any commercial disputes or anything, they will come into your country. Unfortunately, the message that goes out there is that we're able to manipulate our courts against investors. And so sometimes it sends a bad signal for investment. I'm prepared to come as president, work with the Chief Justice, work with the Judicial Council to make sure that we have a judiciary that is fair, that dispenses justice to all without recognition of your political or ethnic color, without recognition of who you are. And so I think that this is a landmark decision. And if I was the Attorney General, I'll just let it rest there. But I hear he says he's going to go to the Supreme Court. It shows how malicious his eagerness to prosecute this case.
And it is only appropriate that before we start to visit the palaces of your Royal Highnesses, we come here to pay our respects to the Central Region House of Chiefs, which is the home region of my running mate, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. I'm therefore deeply honored to come before you today to introduce a very remarkable individual who has not only made significant contributions to our beloved country, Ghana, but who will also, God willing, play a leading role in putting this country back on the track of progress and prosperity. We all know the misfortune of poor governance that has happened to our dear country over the last almost 8 years. Ghana is at a crossroads. Our nation has been driven to the edge of a precipice. Being accepted as a member of the Royal House of Ogua of this historic city, I feel very much at home coming to Cape Coast this morning. It is with great pride that I present to you Professor Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman. My running mate for the upcoming 2024 elections. Nananom, your daughter Nana Jane hails from this very region, and Commander to be precise. The Central Region is a place known for its rich history, its culture, and its commitment. She opened the door for women by paving the way for women in academia by becoming the first woman vice-chancellor of a public university, the University of Cape Coast. And her foundation has opened the door today for many other women to do the same, walk in her track. Her contribution to the University of Cape Coast has made it rise to one of the best universities in the world. Today, many more women have risen to those heights because Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman was the first to lead the way, the first to show that it can be done, and the first to do it. Please permit me to take us down memory lane to describe the gem of a person that I am on behalf of the NDC presenting to you today when Nana worked with me in government. But before then, us in NDC have never ever left Central Region out when we have been in government. I wouldn't say we made Central Region heaven, but we left significant additions to the infrastructure of this region. In the 8 years of Professor Mills and my administration, we built the Commander Sugar Factory that has been recklessly abandoned under this administration. And I can assure Nananom and our father from Central Commander that when we come, we shall do everything.
And welcome to the Mother World Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan-African Television, also live on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. Well, This morning, we are starting the show from the Upper East region. Now, recall, last week, exactly a week now, the NDC was in Tamale. They were launching their campaign. The bid to win the 2024 elections and lead the country from January 7, 2025. The campaign is kicking off officially today, and the flag bearer of the party,
the national election,
former President John Dramani Mahama, is in the Upper East region today. We'll take you live to the Upper East region, where the spokesperson of the flag bearers campaign, Madam Joyce Boa-Muktari, I believe should be joining us, and we'll be having a conversation with her as to what form the campaign will take. And also, the flag bearer has also been speaking about one issue that we will be discussing on the show today. That is the decision of a court of appeal. We've discussed this issue a couple of times. It's the Republic versus Dr. Kesela Toforson, Richard Jakpa, and Big C Limited. I remember it involves ambulances that were brought into this country, which the Attorney General of Ghana is leading the state. Their case is that the ambulances were not fit for purpose. And Dr. Kesela Toforson, having been the one to have actually signed the LC, is one that they are holding accountable, not the contracting ministry, which is the health ministry, but the deputy finance minister who authorized the LC. That is the person we're holding accountable. Dr. Kesela Toforson, after listening to the case, the lawyers decided that it was not, a case had not been made for them to open their defense. So they made a submission of no case to the High Court. The High Court trial judge disagreed with them and said they should open their defense. They filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal, tried to get a trial judge to put the hearing on hold while the Court of Appeal determines that appeal. The trial judge disagreed with them. They went to the Court of Appeal. They sought to do the same thing to stay proceedings. The Court of Appeal also disagreed with them. So they had already opened their defense, made their case. Richard Jakpa was the one who was making his case. Then the Court of Appeal now makes a decision, agreeing with them that they had no case to answer. Well, that brings, at least for now, proceedings in that matter to a halt. So we'll be talking about that shortly also with Madam Joyce Boa-Muktari when we get her on the line. Have a conversation. I understand we have her on the line. Good morning to you, and I hope you're well. Hello, good morning, Mrs. Muktari. Hello. Good morning, Mrs. Muktari. Well, so we're having some difficulties with her on the line, but, well, once we try to secure that connection, a few things to do with. But before that, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I will introduce the topic, introduce the panel. If we're able to get a stable line to Mrs. Joyce Boa-Muktari, we'll have a conversation with him before we start the main discussion. But give us a moment. We'll be right back.
To lead his people into the land of freedom.
She opened the door for women by paving the way for women in academia by becoming the first woman vice chancellor of a public university, the University of Cape Coast. And her foundation has opened the door today for many other women to do the same, walk in her track. Her contribution to the University of Cape Coast has made it rise to one of the best universities in the world. Today, many more women have risen to those heights because Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman was the first to lead the way, the first to show that it can be done, and the first to do it. Please permit me to take us down memory lane to describe the gem of a person that I am on behalf of the NDC presenting to you today when Nana worked with me in government. But before then, us in NDC have never ever left Central Region out when we have been in government. I wouldn't say we made Central Region heaven, but we left significant additions to the infrastructure of this region. In the 8 years of Professor Mills and my administration, we built the Commander Sugar Factory that has been recklessly abandoned under this administration. And I can assure Nana Nombo and our father from Central Commander that when we come, we shall do everything in our power to operationalize the Commander Sugar Factory so that it can provide employment for the youth of this great region. We built the Elmina Fish Processing Plant. We rebuilt the Elmina Castle Bridge. We built the Cape Coast Stadium. We built the Kotokraba Market. We established the Esuasia Water Project that today is providing water to hundreds of communities. We connected several hundreds of communities to the national electricity grid. We built new secondary schools and e-blocks in various parts of the region. We removed many schools from under trees, and we also commissioned numerous road projects in this region. Nana Nombo, you would have noted, rather sadly, that the sound moral values in leadership have been in short supply these last 8 years. Professor Nana Jane is a leader who possesses high moral values. She is incorruptible, and all through her service to Ghana has remained committed and remained patriotic. She comes with wisdom, tact, passion, integrity, and decades of experience to the vice presidential office. The NDC is a party that has development as an integral part of its visionary outlook, and Nana Jane has distinguished herself as an achiever in her own right. As my Minister of Education, Professor Opoku Agyeman demonstrated unparalleled dedication to improving Ghana's educational landscape. With a pragmatic approach devoid of propaganda, she led initiatives that have transformed our educational system and provided opportunities for countless Ghanaian youth. And this is how she did it. Under her leadership of the Ministry of Education, we saw the construction of over 2,000 school projects across the country. And these included classroom blocks, it included teachers' accommodation facilities, it included providing children with school desks and tables. This effort significantly reduced the schools under trees phenomenon and provided a conducive learning environment for our children in basic schools. She was the one who, in line with our 1992 Constitution, introduced the progressively, and mark my words, the progressively free senior high school policy, which benefited thousands of poor and vulnerable children.
Motumaka, name Mamma Quantado. Insi Nananum, Nananuma Hima, my boss, but Asipi. Oyo wana we mu hanyina za sadaka sika semenze mahon ozinkan mamme raka wo mo hui se bibi wo mo ye hondawa mesre won fa seda manyankopon wia aseda ne bi nsoma wo fodo ne nuanom ebusuafo ma kyerɛkyerɛfo bibia onyi mesi wo ma konum Ibia wa boy bia nam umpa bonpo no doso meda hona asipi menyimde bebia megine no ano anya mepia bebia mokomeke gina nso no onye anamona nyimpa krotin no otu insimechizi de da memfia nanenyi ye baha ye besre no nche ye ko hinenyi mi de ma no onye hen bananto sabe nyimpa ko nananu mingina honenyi mbubie the American one some kakra one house or the train was a nyimpa kor erdowa in which into your best one hen and answer one dan hen. Yes, the young who yet is one answer one boy hen. No more day ye be a name in iron sum na yenye. Me whom that man could see the minim kakrebi na casino or nananum honism when you are no honism or a doffo honism. o me party mba ho nsem na ha no metobara so megina ho na ma da party NDC ase madam hona sipi madam hona sekese
problem I want wanje no wo na ndai ni ne fi ho o e dana nyi kwa ho aze yeze nsam dam otumisi na kese onye de beje maka na hu de ewoni anyi ne rutu anamona kwa enyim woni e wo ho a sabe moja num yedu ono na de baby onya obotum wajinu muye ensebusia fonda yembe nyina ma from ne busia fon enda mo waye ya nyame nso ho nyina ati na ebi nso wan supporters ni nyina go obia ye obia sinumu enda kama sam ye wi.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has.
Well, I think that it shows the vindication that he's innocent. We believe that this prosecution should never have taken place. Indeed, it came as a surprise because I had quite forgotten about the appeal. This appeal was made quite a long time ago when they filed a no-case petition before the court, and the High Court, rejected it, and so they went up to appeal. So apparently it's been before the appeal court for quite a long time. So it came as quite a pleasant surprise. But it shows that we still have justice in this country, and that we can work to make the judiciary what we want it to be.
Well, we have seen the AG really indicate that this is a perversion of justice in the interest of public accountability. One, if you were his appointor, what would you have advised him to do at this stage?
Well, I think that this Attorney General has been discredited enough. Anywhere in the world, with the things we've seen and the coaching of witnesses and discussion with witnesses, this prosecution would have been struck out as malicious prosecution. I believe this prosecution is malicious. He is not as a legal representative of the MPP party, over enthusiastic in pursuing political opponents. I've said that when we come, it will be the reverse. We will pursue accountability for the regime that has gone out. But at the same time, if any of our people are involved in the same things that have happened for which we're prosecuting the opposition, we would, previous government would prosecute them too. And so I think that the Attorney General is also the Minister of Justice. He forgets that. He thinks that he's just the Attorney General. The Minister of Justice is supposed to ensure fairness. Anywhere else in this world, this case would have been, he would never even have come to court, not to talk about talking with witnesses, having conversations with witnesses and trying to tell them what to do. Yeah, this case should have truncated long ago.
The critics of yourself and the NDC say that you have suddenly found your voice in reposing some sort of confidence in the judiciary. What's your reaction to this as well?
No, not that we've suddenly found our voice. I do think that despite the issues we have with the judiciary, there are judges who are fair-minded. We're not talking about all judges. In some cases, we criticize judgments. I mean, for instance, to say that your birth certificate cannot be a proof of your identity as a citizen. I don't agree with that judgment. But they pronounced it, and we've abided by it. We sent an election petition, we're thrown out. I said, I respect the judgment of the courts. So we've always respected the judgment of the courts. As president, I can say that I never, ever once interfered in the administration of justice. Even though the Chief Justice was a church member of mine, I can say on authority that I never, ever discussed one case with her. I left it to the judges, the wisdom of the judges, to make those determinations. In this government, we know and we've heard of manipulation of justice. Judges are called and told what decisions to take and all that. I do think that we give judges tenure, security of tenure, so that they can be fair-minded in what they do. And I'm prepared to work with the judiciary to create the kind of judiciary we deserve. The judiciary is the last arbiter.
Once again, welcome back to the Mother World Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Of course, we are live from the Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah studios of Pan-African Television. We are also live on Radio Gold, many other affiliate radio stations across the country. We are live on social media, specifically Facebook, YouTube. Facebook, Pan-African Television is the page. YouTube, you should still be looking for Pan-African Television. Can get to watch us live. Do share a comment or two, and I'll share it with the rest of the world. Now, this week, one of the major issues that have been discussed has to do with this article authored by Kweku Kwarteng. Kweku Kwarteng was, in fact, if you follow the lead up to the 2016 elections, you know who Kweku Kwarteng was, one of the major voices of the New Patriotic Party when it comes to matters of economy and finance. He is a member of parliament. He was made deputy finance minister when they came to power in 2017. Within the government, he had returned to parliament and was now chairman of the finance committee of parliament. Now, he authored this particular letter, this particular statement. He said, and he titled it, "To break the eight, we must first break the norm." Sounded like an advice to the New Patriotic Party, right? But turned out to be a critique of the way Ghana has operated since independence. Because paragraph 3, since independence, we have survived by constantly overspending our means and borrowing to finance the overspending. And many of these expenditures are just bad prioritization, where we always offer higher interest to lenders, borrow more, use a part to repay previous debts, and the rest to pay for the current year's overspending. So we have been running our country's economy like a Ponzi scheme. The economy is struggling today because lenders are now refusing to lend to us. It is just like a Ponzi scheme going into crisis once people stop depositing their monies with them. Many Ghanaians, myself included, worry that if we continue along the path we have been walking, our democracy will collapse. And with it, our political parties. To save our country from this looming danger, the political class must acknowledge this reality and change behavior. And we don't have time. That is the very first thing we're discussing. Those are just portions of the article, because it goes ahead to prescribe 4 ways through which the situation can be turned around. So, not really an advice to the New Patriotic Party, but to everybody within the political class. They need to pull the brake and change direction. And then, like I said, we'll be talking about the Court of Appeal judgment. We'll also conclude. We'll conclude the show by going foreign. There's a development in fact, let me read this story from the BBC for you. 10 hours ago, this is the BBC. It says, the U.S. will deploy additional warships and fighter jets to the Middle East to help defend Israel from possible attacks by Iran and its proxies, the Pentagon said. Tensions remain high in the region over the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran and a key commander of the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Missile defense forces were placed on a state of increased readiness to deploy, the Pentagon said, adding that its commitment to defend Israel was ironclad. Iran's leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has vowed harsh punishment against Israel for the assassination of Haniyeh. Haniyeh was assassinated in Iran. He was there for the inauguration of the new president. So those are the three issues we'll be talking about on the Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, today. Once again, welcome and thank you very much for choosing us. Join us for the discussion today. Kwame Kwesi Prajina is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Sitting right by him is Alassane Suhini, who is Member of Parliament for Tamale North and a former host of this show. Sitting to my right is lawyer Andrew Apia Dankwa. We'll also be joined by Kojo Chumbuafo, who is a former executive director of the Ghana Free Zones, which is now Authority. Will be joining us to complete the panel for today's discussion. Well, let's start with Kuku Kwatin's article. And I'll start with his colleague in Parliament, Alassane Suhini, on this one. Alassane, good morning.
Good morning, Sena. And good morning to our viewers and listeners. And let me say good morning to Al Kwesi and counsel to my left. Mr. Apia Dankwa, good to share the platform as always with you.
Yes, indeed.
And to the matter raised by Honorable Kweku Kwatin, first of all, I've heard people commend him for his boldness and his forthrightness. I, however, have listened to he himself speak about this matter. And my first disappointment in the midst of the commendation he was getting was that he declared that this was meant to be an internal memo. And it somehow got leaked to the public. And I was disappointed. Because what is the use of truth that is hidden under the table? Especially if it is intended to ignite a frank conversation that will improve our society. Should it be said indoors and behind walls? And why so? So, I mean, that was my first, observation. The fact that the commendations were coming in thick and fast, only for him to say that, look, this was not meant for public consumption. Then I looked at what he wrote, and I thought it wasn't new. It is something that have been said variously by different people in politics and outside politics. The fact that our politics in the form and the way that it is done currently is bad is no news. Many people in politics and outside politics have said that. The fact that our economy, hasn't significantly changed, and that in most cases it's as if we engage in procurement politics. And it's a phrase that I remember first seeing in an article written by a former deputy finance minister under President Kufuor, Dr. Agambire, who brilliantly wrote about procurement politics and how many of the projects and programs government undertake most of the time is just about procurement so that people can make their cuts, and not about the relevance or the impact of what is being done. So the fact that our economy has been run, maybe not in the exact words that he used, as a Ponzi scheme, has been said variously by different people in politics and outside politics. And what, in my view, is new is what he says about how to break the eight. That's, in my view, is what I consider new. And maybe in that context, you can forgive those who believe that this was just a bash of his own government, which he has been part of. Now, he talks about how we borrow to pay previous debts, and also overspend on future projects. And I'm left wondering what he was doing as chairman of the finance committee when he tabled the most number of loans in the House as chairman of the finance committee for this government to contract. Because there's no loan that this government contracted that didn't come to Parliament. And for the most part, he was chairman of the finance committee. That is after serving as deputy minister of finance. And in some cases, some of the loans, whilst we in the minority opposed them because we thought that they were not clearly defined, their usage, were not clearly defined. He as finance committee rallied his members, the members of his party, to pass these loans. So you are wondering what this is aimed at, his piece, what is it aimed at? But the truth remains that our current politics is unsustainable. That's, you cannot deny. It's unsustainable. Is it about the way we conduct internal and external elections? The fact that most of the time the highest bidder emerges winner? And the fact that our electorates, even those that you expect to be sophisticated, some way, somehow, expect candidates in internal and external elections to induce them before they make a decision. It's general knowledge. That has to change. And that change will not come from those who run for office only. It also has to come from the rest of us who make the decision to take part in the electoral process and to vote. Because, like I said, it's a two-way street. There are those who are willing to bribe, and there are those who actually demand the bribe before they make a decision when there's any election. So we need to accept that that kind of politics will eventually lead us nowhere. Maybe except to destruction. That aside, our governance system, and again he's right, it's been structured to run in such a way that it enables the party in power to win the next election, period. So, are you therefore surprised that our current administration seem uncaring about how messed up our economy is, how messed up our educational sector is, how messed up our environment is, how messed up our security is, but more focus on breaking the eight? Are you surprised that that is the focus of the current administration? When last did you hear that government have had a meeting to discuss the exchange rate, for example, and how one cedi is now exchanging for more than $1 is now exchanging for more than 15 Ghana cedis? When last did you hear that government is concerned about it and meeting to do something about it? When last did you hear that the economic management team led by the vice president is discussing the fact that our inflation for the first time in the Fourth Republic is over 20%? When last did you hear that? But how often haven't you seen or heard that the vice president is on a campaign to break the 8. So the governance structure is such that a party in power is more concerned about winning the next election than really transforming lives and making an impact. And so a government is sworn into office, and about 60%, if not more, of its activities are simply tailored towards winning the next election. And the actions and activities that are tailored towards winning the next election mostly are not about transforming lives and our communities. It's about making appointments that are favorable either to state institutions like we are seeing now, or our security agencies like we are seeing now. So the discussion as we approach the election is about who becomes IGP, who is maintained and who is removed, who becomes a deputy in charge of what. It's about which parliamentary candidate needs to be the NHI deputy director, or the boss director, or the free zones director, or deputy director, or the audit service, so that the person can leverage on the state resources and largesse to annex a parliamentary seat. That is the focus, and that is unsustainable. So again, there is truth in the fact that our politics, whether you are looking at it in terms of how we conduct elections or in terms of how we govern, points to one thing, that it is unsustainable and it has to change. Otherwise, we are headed for destruction. So, to that extent, I agree with him. But then, it is not a new thing. And he is not the first person to say it. I have said many times that if you look at where we are now in our politics, the December elections is going to be a watershed elections. It is a make or break for our democracy. After the December elections, the actions of the next government, I say this with all sincerity and all the seriousness I can gather, the next government that will be formed after the December 7 elections will either supervise an improved faith in our democracy or a destruction of it. We are at the tipping point, and the next government will have to give a direction as to whether we fall off the cliff or we pull the brakes on the destruction. One of the key things I have noticed is that if for nothing at all, people want accountability. If the next government is not able to lead improvements in their lives, if the next government is not able to lead improvements in their communities, they will expect the next government to at least hold people accountable for the faith that we are in, the state that we are in. I mean, the state that we are in, not faith, the state that we are in. They will expect the next government to do that. People must account for the corrupt practices and earnings that we see all around us. People must be held responsible for the destruction of the economy, for the destruction of education, for the destruction of our environment. Once that is done, you will notice a renewed faith and confidence in our democracy. Otherwise, there's no hope. There's no hope. And you can speak to people on the street. You can eavesdrop, even if you don't have what it takes to, start a conversation. And many people, especially our youth, are beginning to toy with the idea of an alternative, not a democratic alternative. It doesn't matter how we repeat it, that the worst form of a democracy is still better than the best form of the alternative. If through our actions, people don't feel what we say, that the worst form of democracy is better than the worst form of any other government, because they have never experienced any other government, and they are experiencing this democracy that they feel is not serving their needs, they may be tempted to try that alternative that some of us in our young age perhaps experience. But we are no longer that young. So those who are coming after us may not have experienced it. And so they don't know what you are talking about. All they know is that this current administration is not meeting their needs. This current system of government is not meeting their aspirations. And so we all have to be worried about the kind of politics that we are doing. And that's why sometimes I get scared when I hear people say that the two political parties are the same. The two major political parties are the same. In fact, in the beginning, I used to say that, and it was largely true, that those sentiments came mostly from people who were disappointed that they voted for the NPP, but are still yet not convinced if they should change their vote for the NDC. But it is a call to us, especially in the NDC, who believe that we are better than the NPP, to get conscious of the things that we do that may be confusing people to equate us to the NPP, because we are not the same. We are not the same. At the least, I believe that the NDC has a better conscience. The NDC has a better conscience when it comes to what is wrong and what is right. So, for example, I'll just use two examples and wrap up on this. If people are concerned that a contract has been given to brand buses and the contract is inflated, because the NDC has a conscience, it will respond. It will try to ameliorate, even if you are not satisfied with the measures used to ameliorate. But because it has a conscience, it will not ignore, it will ameliorate. So monies will be retrieved, some people will be asked to stand aside. When people complain about National Service Secretariat and the corruption going there, because the NDC has a conscience, it will investigate. People will be sent home, and some will be prosecuted. And I can give you many other examples. You may not be satisfied with that level of, amelioration or attempt to fix, but the conscience will always lead the NDC to do something. On the other hand, what do you have? SkyTrain, $2 million. Nobody gives a toss. Paolugu factory, $13 million. And we are talking about dollars, not Ghana cedis, by the way, compared to 3 million Ghana cedis, right? fact, the president's daughter, the other day I heard that she was at a salon, and was just this week, and was having a conversation with people and said, oh, and was assuring the person on the other phone that, oh, Ghana news cycle, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something else will come. So the person should relax. Nothing is going to happen. As if there are no elders at home. Akubu Chumbafo is here. He was in government. He will tell you the number of times that he was called at home by elders to explain certain matters. A lie. Even when he was innocent. But people will care to know what is happening. But you have, especially this New Patriotic Party led by Nana Akufo-Addo, leading like they captured us as slaves, like it was a coup, through a coup d'etat that they came to power. And the rest of us are their beck and call. I mean, they decide and do what they want, and we are left to just talk. That kind of politics is unsustainable. But we in the NDC must be conscious that despite all these efforts and the differences that we have been making in the past to distinguish ourselves from the MPP, there's still that notion that we are the same. And that is why the next Mahama government, inshallah, in 2025, must be awake to this reality, so that we can focus on doing things differently, being more responsible, and being more, proactive when it comes to serving, to meet the aspirations of especially our young people. It's critical for our democracy and the survival of our political system. I have said it, Sena, on this platform before, that I have been in 3 professions. This is my 3rd one. I was first a teacher, secondly a broadcaster, and now I'm a politician. But trust me, I have less joy introducing myself in public as a politician compared to the pride with which I used to introduce myself either as a teacher or a broadcaster. Because in public, these days, once you are introduced as a politician, if you are someone who is very sensitive and can read the public mood, yeah, there are a few who will be excited to see you, especially if they are your party people, or if they are just people who admire certain things about you. But by and large, the mood is always like, Ibide they chop one money. They are the reason we are in the fate that we are in the state that we are in. You can almost always sense it in the room that you are not part, you are not considered, even if they are going through suffering and you are also going through the same suffering, they don't consider you part, they rather hold you responsible. And you can hear all those imaginations of political class benefits. Phantom, what do you call it? Benefits that we enjoy. But you blame them. An existential threat to the community. So, what Kweku Kwarteng has said, one is not new. It's been said by many, many people in politics and outside politics. My disappointment, however, is that when the commendations were pouring in for him, he himself declared that he didn't mean it to be public. Why not? That's my disappointment. But I think we need to have more of these conversations to wake ourselves up to the reality that our current politics, our current system and style of governing can only lead us to destruction.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for setting the tone for that discussion. We're discussing Kweku Kwarteng's assessment or evaluation of the performance of us governments under the Fourth Republic, specifically the borrowing to pay debts, and then he also talks about the political culture. One man who has consistently talked about this on this network, every time political culture is lawyer Pia Dankwala. Let's listen to you.
So, Sena, good morning. Let me wish you viewers a good morning. My brother Soyini I was commenting for what is a very powerful submission, which I want to associate on forces with, except the bit about GM becoming president. Yeah, because Alan Chamantin will be the next president of Ghana, inshallah. Which my senior crime big brother, good morning. I consider it is a privilege to share any platform with you, and one of the biggest political icons in this country. It's humbling to share this platform with you, and every day I'm challenged to prove my worth in sharing this platform with Mr. Pratt. I hope today I can prove myself worthy again, especially with this powerful submission. Indeed, I was not surprised but glad with the article Kweku Kwarteng wrote, except to add that my happiness would have been complete if he had gathered courage to say that the Ponzi scheme was being perpetrated by Nanado's government and not by all governments in the history of this country. Because a cursory reading of the economic history of this country would tell you that the economy hasn't been the same. I think in the early 80s, there was a fundamental shift of focus in the structure of our economy by way of the structural adjustment program. The government of the day at that time fulfilled the dictates of the structural adjustment program to the letter, except to add that it is right that no economy has grown and has been successful on the back of following strictly the dictates of free enterprise. It is right, if there's something history has taught us, no economy, not even the economy of the US, the vanguards of capitalism, and they didn't build the economy on free trade. The United Kingdom didn't build the economy on free trade. No economy in this world, no big successful economy has been built on the back of the free trade. And so in 1983, when we went to the IMF and they gave us an economic program which was premised on free trade, and the government, they followed it to the letter. And because they followed it to the letter, you cannot look back at history and say that when they were following the dictates of an organization they felt were the vanguards of how to create an economy, they were organizing a Ponzi scheme. It wasn't a Ponzi scheme, because for it to be Ponzi, it must be deliberate, it must be intentional, it must be something you have sat down, thought about, and planned. Because Ponzi scheme came from a guy called Charles Ponzi, who sat down and then created a scheme, a very dubious scheme. And listen, I'm going to offer people bonds, take their money and promise them an incredibly high interest rate, for 100% interest rate over a period of 90 days. And then I'll take Accra's money, and then I'll go and take Swing money, and then I'll pay Accra, and then so that cycle will be going. And then at some time in it, now I was a small boy, but I recall the IMF praising Ghana for successfully implementing. So how can you say that is a Ponzi scheme? You take President Kufuor went to Epic. He came and he started the PSIs, trying to build the private sector. Because we all know that when you're talking about the structures of any economy, then you need to deliberately build the private sector. Government needs to use its fiscal policy to build the private sector. And that attempt was made. Like once again, it may not have yielded, as it have been overly successful, but at least we saw the economy grow fundamentally, radically. He did not run a Ponzi scheme, because his intention, for all intents and purposes, was to see the economy grow. We saw GM Mills. You may disagree with, I personally disagreed with his cancellation of the creation of, what's it called, the offshore, the back offshore thing. But that's a matter of ideology. He may have disagreed with President Kufuor's view. You can never blame somebody for following their own ideology. But we saw how the economy grew. You may disagree with it, but it wasn't a Ponzi. There was no intent to destroy this economy. There was no intent. You saw President Mahama, and I think I'm one of the biggest critics of President Mahama. But when you read why he went to IMF, by the IMF themselves, President Mahama, he said what he spent too much. But he spent too much on what? We all see the infrastructure development. And we all know that in building the right economy, you need to also, one of the structures of any strong economy is infrastructure development. Also the energy crisis, and we all see the infrastructure around us. You understand? So yes, he too may have made mistakes. But was it a Ponzi? Was it a plan to dupe the people of Ghana? And tell him plainly that you have organized a Ponzi. Nanado has organized a Ponzi, and you see, we shouldn't whittle it down by making it the problem of all Ghanaians. How can Kwame Nkrumah organize a Ponzi? Well, you are saying that from 1957, all governments have organized it. How can you say Kwame Nkrumah has organized a Ponzi? So my first point is that Kweku Kwarteng, my only disappointment, and I'm saying my job would have been complete if Kweku Kwarteng had gathered the courage and looked into the eyes of Nana Akufo-Addo. Nana, you organized a Ponzi. Why am I saying Nanado organized a Ponzi? When he took over in 2017, I think we were in the IMF program. The debt to GDP was around 50-something%. At least the stability that was needed to grow and transform the economy was there. So then what it required was for somebody who anchored his campaign on coming to transform the economy. And we all know that to transform the economy, you, the government, must use the power you have over the economy, being your fiscal policy, your monetary policy. You want to create that enabling environment to deliberately build sectors, real sectors of the economy, agri, industry, build SMEs, you understand, to boost productivity. 3, having had the benefit of one of the prescriptions of the IMF being how to manage your expenditure, financial responsibility. What was Nanado's fidelity to those principles? What were they? Because if you are saying that, you see, to transform the economy, then you, the government, you need to use, first of all, we all know and they say it all the time, expand the tax net. I remember in 2016, 2015, expand the tax net. And I don't think they don't know that in trying to expand the tax net, the solution is not to increase taxes. The solution is not to introduce more taxes. And indeed, because they were Ponzi, they put the first one on us. In their first budget, abolished, only to reintroduce times 3 the so-called nuisance taxes that they claim they had abolished. And I want to use the example of a prophet exorcising demons from somebody possessed. So exorcise 70 demons. Then you yourself, you the prophet yourself, you go and bring 210 more demons to repossess the person. That's what they have done. Then that's what a Ponzi will do. That's what a Ponzi will do. Also, we talk about 1D, 1F, and you want to have factories, and you can only show your commitment to 1D, 1F. By the way, brilliant idea. Fantastic idea. But what was Nanado's commitment to 1D, 1F? What was Nanado's commitment to 1D, 1F? So you spend right over about 5 billion on NAPCO, which was a Ponzi. Because we should ask Nanado, what has been the NAPCO's contribution to our GDP? How many jobs did NAPCO create, and are those jobs sustainable? Where is NAPCO now? So all those monies, where are they? I can tell when Alan Chapati comes, we will chase them over NAPCO. If it means people will go to prison because of NAPCO, people will go to prison over NAPCO. In the likely event Mahama comes, so now how do you pull you and my senior Christ like if nobody goes to prison on the grounds of NAPCO? I'm telling you, people must go to jail for NAPCO because it's a Ponzi. NAPCO is a Ponzi. You get the picture. How can you justify spending about 5 billion on NAPCO? and you spend 400 million on 1D1F, then clearly it's a case of let me do something to represent something. So I can take their eye off the ball, then I can steal their money through NABCO. That's what has happened. Take Galamsey. Because when you look at international trade, the fundamental, because, and any economist will tell that, in building the economy, you also need to create a system where you can attract FDIs. I'm glad a free trade expert is here. You must create a system that would attract foreign direct investment. And we know that the fundamental principle in international investment is that you own a sovereign right over your natural resources. That's the foundation, because people want to come to your country because they want to come and exploit your natural resources. But you have sovereign rights, the structures that will make your economy to be transformed. Then you need to take care of the well-being of your citizens. So you need a strong pension scheme and all. You need to, because you see, we are a mixed economy. Because we are a mixed economy, there are roles that also the government needs to play. We understand that when it comes to education, when it comes to health, ideally the government should be providing those services. And then we also know that you can't create, you understand, there was a duty on all of us Ghanaians to build the structures that was going to deliver on the promises of democracy. So you build the economic structures, you build the social structures, but you also build the political structures, the political culture that can sustain our democracy. Now, in 2008, when Nana-Addo took over from took control of the NPP, he first of all destroyed the culture in his party. Mm-hmm. That's what he did. He destroyed the culture in his party. So when my brother Sweeney was saying, I advise my friends in the NDC that you must do everything in your power to protect the culture that exists in your party. Because Nana-Addo has proven to us that just one man, just one rotten apple is capable of destroying all the apples in a very beautiful vineyard. Because that's what has happened. In 2008, he first of all destroyed the culture, the political culture in the NPP. Everything became, what am I going to get from this? And that was the culture, the spirit that was driving the party. Every decision was premised on what is in it for me. He drove that culture, became president of Ghana with that culture, turned the character of the NPP into a party that now was driven by that culture. And so, because the sole consideration of the party is what is in it for me, they won't call anybody who is misbehaving. Unlike you said, my brother here was having calls. He couldn't sleep for things that he didn't do. He couldn't sleep. But the NPP party won't call anybody when they are misbehaving, when they are stealing all of our property, because their sole consideration is what is in it for me. And that's what is in it for me is a culture that has been created by Nana-Addo and my friends, relatives. I think you done very well not to allow that way to permit you. Unfortunately, I'm married. My wife is one of your kinspeople. So very beautiful. It for me as against what is in the interest of Ghana. On Wednesday, I was alarmed when Franklin Kujo of Imani, Imani, CSO that do not fail to claim that they are the leading CSO and to have a voice on every policy issue. And Franklin Kujo had the temerity to go and write on his Facebook wall that in the matter of West Blue judgment debt, is it judgment debt? Yes. The 95 million. That in his hurried attempt to try and protect Dr. Bamia. I can tell you that the only reason why he will make such a reckless statement is because the familiar spirit of parochialness has infiltrated into Imani, who are supposed to be the vanguards of this democracy. That's the level we have gotten to as a country. Because of one bad decision we all made in 2016, in spite of good counsel. Yeah, I'll commend my prayer again. He counseled us, but we didn't listen. But they too, they were at fault. And when you allow us to sleep in darkness for 3 years, we'll stop thinking. We'll stop thinking. You understand? But right now, he's destroyed his party, and he's destroying the country to the political culture. So right now, there's no proper accountability. And because of that, people are afraid to look into Nanado's eye. Kweku Kwati is afraid to look into Nanado's eye and say, you have created a Ponzi scheme. You, Nanado, you have created a Ponzi scheme. You have created a Ponzi scheme. You have killed any credibility the economy of Ghana has. You've killed it. And that's why nobody wants to invest in this economy anymore. You've killed it. You have been reckless in your expenditure. You've done nothing to increase the revenue of this country. You've killed private sector. You've killed private initiative. You've killed the economy, essentially. Taking the country 200 years back. Taking Ghana 200 years back. You've killed the confidence the people of this country have in the ability of this democracy to deliver on its promises. That's what he's done. And Kweku Kwati should not be afraid to look into his eyes, into the eyes of Nana. Depraved politics, to the extent that Sweeney right now is not proud to call himself a politician. He's even afraid, are you not? Because you're afraid you'll be chased. You'll be chased because people want to chase him. Kweku Kwati shouldn't be afraid. Indeed, the people of Ghana should not be afraid to hold this man responsible, especially in the light of what has been unraveled by the Chapadie. Nostradamus number 2, Nostradamus. Yes, Nostradamus wrote a book, Les Liberties. My French is not good, so forgive me. Or Les Liberties, which prophesied the French Revolution, the rise of Hitler, the attack on the what's called Twin Towers. You have a Chapadie, which yesterday Basantali would compare it to the main calf, or whatever it is, Hitler's Mein Kampf. Thank you, Accra. Mein Kampf. A strategy on how a group of people, a small group of people, want to capture this country and become the royal family of this country. I think enough is enough. Enough is enough. He has taken us back. He's destroyed our political culture. Our political culture, I wouldn't say was very participatory, but at least it wasn't parochial to this extent. We need a restoration of the culture, political culture in this country. We need a political culture that will hold leaders accountable. We need political culture that will allow for open disagreement. We need a political culture that will safeguard a governorship governed by the principles of rule. But we did not listen. And we would not listen, or we did not listen. We believed the lies. We believed the glaring lies because of the weak culture in this country. So to end, I think it is clear. It is clear that Ghanaians need to rise and ensure that, first of all, the continuation, the perpetuation of this Nanado agenda, which they believe can only succeed if they find a way of making Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia president, does not succeed. Because after all, he himself said that he was tasked by Nanado to build the structures of this economy. So clearly, he was part of the Ponzi. So we cannot reward the Ponzi when we've discovered the Ponzi. We cannot. So we must do everything in our power to sack Dr. Bawumia. We must even question the importance of the MPP again, because if the party is so weak that they can sit down and allow one bad apple to spoil all the apples, because they are serious enablers of what has happened to this country. When a record is being written about how one man could destroy the very soul of this country, the MPP will not be exonerated. All of us, we will not be exonerated. 2, we should also look at the media. People who decide that they are going to go into the media must understand that beyond all institutions, they stand in a very honored place because they are the vanguards of this democracy. They have the power of directing public opinion towards building the right culture that will sustain our democracy, that will give us the best chance of fulfilling on the promise of this democracy. They must have a serious introspection and realize that their commitment is to Ghana, and always put the interest of all of us ahead of their own parochial interests. Because like Kweku Kwatin said, when this democracy falls, when the people of this country start to chase people they put their trust in, their powers in, they will not be spared. They must understand that. They won't be spared. And finally, the people of this country must understand that sovereign power really is in our hands. And we cannot be careless. In fact, we cannot be reckless and give powers to people and not control the use of those powers. After all, Madison said that if politicians were angels, then there will be no need for controls. But because they are no angels, then we all agree that Bawumia must go, that the MPP must be punished for being enablers, that the media must have a self-introspection. But we are going to choose a new leader. And it's not a choice, it's not about the parties. The Constitution is so clear about that. The Constitution is so clear about that. Yes, JM did not commit this Ponzi. He's not part of the Ponzi. Like, Atamos is not part of the Ponzi. President Gofo is not part of the Ponzi. There's only one Ponzi, that's Nanado. But right now, we need somebody also who has demonstrated a competence in building structures of the economy. I call all Ghanaians to look at the Great Transformational Plan and give our powers to Honorable Alan John Kojo Chemantin to lead the building of the structures of our economy so that we can all reap the benefits of those structures.
One good thing that Vip did in Ghana since his lifetime that benefited the nation, only troubling our lives. He must give us a break. Wind of change is blowing. Yusuf Mohammed is also joining us from Tamale Central. Says Professor Dinana Opokwa Jimane, lies give reasons why women should be empowered. But considering the conduct of Madam Jean Mensah and the AC boss, Madam Hawa Kumsung, and their lives, one confidence and interest in women empowerment will be forced to decline. There's Mata Hamdallah, who is also joining us. Looking at what is happening in Ghana, if Ghanaians were serious people, MPP wouldn't have gotten up to 30% in the general elections. The hardship is too much in the country.
Yes, good morning to all your august listeners and watchers. Good morning to the panel. My brother Sweeney. When I say Sweeney is my brother, he is my brother. We come a very long way. My young lawyer friend and recent convert to vagrancies of Akufo-Addo. But I forgive him because we went to a good school, and that is why he's discovered his conscience. And he's also an avowed Liverpool supporter, so he has good stock. So welcome to our world. And of course, be one of the people who frustrated the NDC government. Court case after court case after court case. So you remember, right? And at one point, when he managed to win some, what do you call a pirate victory, that's what you lawyers call it, he rode into his hometown in the back of a pickup and raised his hands like when Jesus went to Nazareth just before they crucified him. So the enablers are many. One of the enablers of Akufo-Addo happens to be my own aunt, Auntie Sophia, the SWA Chief Justice. Because if they had stopped Akufo-Addo when he wanted to remove Charlotte Osei, when you have characters like Akufo-Addo being your president, they will find ways to circumvent any law, because in theory, every law is circumventable. So, the spirit in which the Article 72 holders are protected is that they should cross governments. That there are certain parts of this of the government that need to go across governments for very good reason, so that there is a semblance of impartiality, even if it is infinitesimal. There's a semblance that the Auditor General should cross governments, that the Chief Justice and the justices of the Supreme Court should cross governments, that judges should cross governments, that the electoral commissioner should cross governments. But what did the Akufo-Addo do when he came to power? He created a scenario to remove the electoral commissioner so that they could rig the next election. So what was Charlotte Osei accused of? Procurement improprieties and incompetence. Do you know the principal, their star witness in the persecution of Charlotte Osei? It was A.B. Adjei. A.B. Adjei is the indicted former head of the PPA, who at the time had been sacked by going to the finance minister to demand that pensioners are paid. And I commend her for it. But I hate to say that she gave Akufo-Addo the carte blanche to be the fascist that he is today. Kweku Kwatin talks about governments being Ponzi scheme. And like lawyer has so eloquently said, I hate to tell him that the only Ponzi in this house is Akufo-Addo. Akufo-Addo appointed is in government. It's a government appointee. His mother is a government appointee. His brother is a government appointee. His sister is a government appointee. He himself is a government appointee. The president's first cousin is Kenufureta, and I'll get to Kenufureta in a minute. His first cousin, even though they deny it, his first cousin was Akwesi Amakwata. So one person, how many of these things can you do? His first cousin is Atachia. Indeed, truth be told, Atachia is supposed to be the Ochehini today. The reason why they didn't give it to him is because he's a twin. And he himself didn't want it. But Ochehini should be Atachia. That is the reason why I am surprised that people are surprised that Akufo-Addo is doing what he has done. Many of us warned you, Ghanaians, that this is where we are going to get to. Kofi Kumse warned you. Kwesi Pratt warned you. Yours truly. I hate to tell you I told you so, but then again I did. Dr. Nyaho Tamaklu. So many people who had insight into this man's character warned us that this is where we're going to get to. But for some reasons that I will adduce to tribalism, elitism, religious, I don't even know what to call it. The word that comes to my mind is stupidity, but I won't say that. Right? The school, primary school that I went to, Richard School, Akufo-Addo himself told us on assumption of office that the pastors in Richard were coming to his house every single day to pray for him so that he becomes president. I didn't say it, Akufo-Addo said it. So I met one of the Richard pastors at a birthday celebration for one of my political godfathers. And I asked him, Osofo, are you still praying? And as soon as I asked the question, my godfather said, and I said, Mpacho, uncle. Those of you who know who I'm talking about know who I'm talking about. Say, uncle, Mpacho, mami beside the question. He said, Osofo, Mugusu Bompaye. And I told him, Mumpaye fina mo boy ene de Akufo-Addo ba power. And me bobi wa. And he smiled, a wry smile. You could see that the smile wasn't quite coming, but he knew what I was telling him. You see, in the Bible, when the Israelites were on their way to Canaan, during the lost years of the Israelites, at a point, they wanted an idol to worship because they said they had lost God. And so Moses, under pressure, gave them an idol. And when the idol didn't deliver what they want, they got angry. And then Moses asked them, but are you not the people who said I should collect your gold and build the idol? Did I steal your gold? So, Ghanaians, we caused Ekufuado. So, in essence, you ask for your dollar rate to go from 4 cedis to 16 cedis. You ask for it. Because Kenoforiata told you that he was the better manager of the economy. When he did it, you didn't even ask for his A-level results. And yet, he was your finance minister. So why wouldn't your dollar go from, your CD go from? And he and his deputy Charles Eduwaini are the only people who have benefited from this because they contracted loans on our behalf and benefited from the loans because their companies were the ones who were procuring the loans. You see, the problem with allowing fascists to become your leaders is that they blur the lines. There is no pause when it comes to the fascists. Zero pause. So the excuse for Kenoforiata to be able to procure loans on our behalf was that, before he came to government, his company was doing it. When the reason why he should not have been doing it is because if you are making money from procuring loans, the tendency will be for you to go and procure more loans. It's simply human. You see, Suini said something about when we were in government. President Mahama was an activist president. A lot of people don't know. President Mahama kept his ear to the ground. President Mahama listened to radio shows. President Mahama, even certain fora that were on, he was there, but under a different name. So you didn't know. So the situation in which he was alluding to was when we were building the Free Zones building. One day he called me with his phone and said I should come and see him in the office. He wanted to discuss the building with me. When the president calls you and tells you I want to discuss something with you, if you are smart, you should know he has said something. So I carried my papers and I went to his office. And the first question he asked me was, he said, tell me about the building. And I said, because the board, we came to a conclusion that in order to present a face for the free zones that will, yes sir, I am on top of everything they are doing. And I even explained to him that at one point we needed construction supervisors. I got 2 people who were employees of free zones, and I took advantage of a JICA course, and I sent them to Korea so that we didn't have to pay external construction. And then he asked me the question that he really wanted to ask me. And if you are smart, when you are being spoken to, you will know. He said to me that I should make sure that I don't embarrass him. That he has faith in me because he's known me for a while, but I shouldn't embarrass him because he doesn't want anybody to come to him and come and tell him that I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I said, that will never happen. So after that, then he actually came up with something which today is probably the most important feature of that building. He said that when you finish the building, there will be a lot of traffic there. So why don't you put an underground parking there? He said that to me. And I hadn't thought of it, to be honest with you. I hadn't thought of it. So we went to speak to the contractors, and we told them, look, we need, because of traffic reasonings, we need to have another. So we went back. That was an afterthought. We went back. We did the underground, and we put an 80-bay car park underneath the building. So the story that Suhini was telling you that he didn't want to tell you because he knows the story, that is who President Mahama was. President Mahama didn't call me and tell me that go and pad that building and bring me some of the money like Akufo-Addo would have done. Or that if I was doing it, he wouldn't have said anything because he knows that he himself is doing worse. That is the reason why till today they have tried, huffed and puffed and blown the house down. And for somebody like me who went to Yoko 34 times, they still weren't able to do anything to me. Because I was number 3. If I wasn't 1 or 2, I was 3 on their hit list. And I was told several times that Yoko said, "Wano, ne do waba." You see, like Happy Adanko said, we are at, not just are we at the precipice, we are at the confluence in this country. Given what Akufo-Addo and his gang of buccaneers have done, and I call them buccaneers, brigands have done in this country, how do we progress? How does the next president of this country, hopefully it will be President Mahama, heart crossed, fingers crossed, in President Mahama, how is he going to even begin to run this country and assure people that it's going to be well? How much time are people going to give him? Yesterday there was a report that the US Embassy was saying that visa applications have been, 300%? The Canadians are even more. And this government's response was to send Bedi to go to the Canadians and tell them to stop giving Ghanaians visas. When he himself, his children, are all American citizens.
He himself has become at large.
He himself is the ambassador at large. I wonder what that means.
So he can travel at large.
You see, there is something fundamentally wrong in this country. Something fundamentally wrong in this country, and the next government must fix it. And to all those people who think they have gotten away with stealing from and robbing the Ghanaian citizens blind, you are joking. You will be held to account. If for nothing, the same standard that you set for us, we will set it for you. And woe is you if you don't pass that test. They came into government, so you remember, with a blaze of glory. We will do this, we will do that, we will do this. Just persecuting some of us who had done absolutely nothing wrong. I have a 90-year-old father and an 80-year-old mother. So he knows my parents. My mom fell sick because of the persecution. Because there were times when she had to accompany me to Yoko and climb 5 flights of stairs. You set that standard for us and you think you're going to get away. Because what? You have packed the courts. You think you're going to get away because you have written laws, new laws and new amendments. You think you're going to get away? Have you forgotten that the supreme will of the people of this country is in the people itself? Aren't you followers of history? Don't you know that Blaise Compaoré, at a point, the most well-armed president in this whole of Africa, ran away from the top of his mansion? Have you seen what has happened in Kenya? Have you seen what has happened in Nigeria? And you think you're going to get away? Until you people came to power, we never knew that if you had a bank account and you deposit money in the bank, it is not safe. You have closed down people's banks and accused them of running Ponzi schemes when the government itself was running the biggest Ponzi scheme. Kenneth Foyeta went to borrow money knowing we couldn't pay. What do you call that? You see, banking itself by definition is a Ponzi scheme. The only reason why banks don't fail willy-nilly is that it is a controlled Ponzi scheme. So the Ponzi scheme is insured. So there's a limit at which they will lend because it is controlled. Kenneth Foyeta went and borrowed money, no, we couldn't pay. He borrowed the money, no, we couldn't pay, because at every iteration, his company, Data Bank, was making money. His company, Enterprise Insurance, was insuring the loan. Their last caper was that the trains that came into this country, the one that came to crash, Enterprise Insurance was the insurer, and up to today, they haven't paid. Somebody close to me, whose mother passed recently, she had been doing funeral investment for 25 years with Enterprise Insurance. When the mother passed and she went to check on the investment, she had only 2,000 cedis in account. They have systematically whittled away people's money, stolen people's money. A very prominent journalist who had 27,000 in savings at Data Bank wanted the money back, and they gave that person only 9,000. You see, that is the untold story of what these people have done. I know you are nodding your head. Give me a few minutes. I'll round up. You see, things have happened in this country for which the next government needs to sit up and make people pay. Because otherwise, the notion that NDC and MPP are the same, which I vehemently disagree with, will go from fiction to fact. In this country today, it is not uncommon to wake up and see somebody building an 8-story building next to your house. And if you go down and check, it is most likely a minister. For the first time in this country, a minister of state, namely the transportation minister, Kweku Kwate, a court sacked him from somebody's land in Chado. Kwekwe Siama. Yes, sorry. Kweku Kwate, I apologize. Kwekwe Siama, all of them are Kweku, including the president, was sacked from land in Chado. The president has heard of it, he didn't sack him. For the first time in this country, every blade of grass, every piece of land, go to cantonments, Laboni, Airport Residential Area, Roman Ridge, every government building that can be sold is being sold. For the first time in this country, even the military and the police are giving away their lands to supposed developers who are coming to develop part of it, and then what kind of madness is this? Now we have gotten to the mental hospital. The mental hospital. This government is so mindless that they are attempting to steal land belonging to people with mental problems. And you know who the board chairperson of the mental hospital is? Kenneth Foyeta's wife. You see, there is something fundamentally wrong in this country, and in the famous words of Judge Ito during the O.J. Simpson trial, something is wrong. Something is wrong when people attempt to steal children's park. That is what is going on. AC Sutherland Ade Children's Park is being stolen as we speak. Something is wrong when mental hospital land and a forum belonging to mental patients who need correction is being stolen. And the excuse that they make is that, oh, the town has gotten up with mental hospital. Are you serious? The people who put the thing there, they didn't know that it was in the middle of town. Isn't the mental hospital next to the Holy Trinity Cathedral? They didn't see it. Something is wrong when you attempt to steal land belonging to Bostal Institute. Something is wrong. Something is wrong when you try to reduce the size of Achimota Forest so that you can steal the land. Something is wrong when you try to steal parks and gardens in cantonments. Because everybody who has his head screwed on knows that a city like Accra needs a carbon sink. That carbon sink is provided by the green areas in this town, the parks, the gardens, the horticultural places, the Achimota forests of Accra. And when Accra gets hotter, we are all burning in our rooms, then you are complaining. Why do you think you are burning? My brothers and sisters, something is wrong in this country. And what is wrong? It's a Akufo-Addo and his gang of thieves and criminals and buccaneers. And if you want to know what they have done, remove them in December, you will know. We have found out, per Samuel Kujeto's investigations, that the president has given an ambulance contract to his daughter's baby daddy. They have paid them over $34 million. For nothing. And yet this same president is trying the minority leader for something he hasn't done. And guess what? Why is that him? Ambulance. I have offered them a piece of advice that whatever they steal, they shouldn't steal the mental hospital. Because many of them will not want to be living in Bantam. Something is wrong in this country. Something is wrong.
But just a few comments. Prince Henry Koforidua says the fact is the MPP government led by Nana Akufo-Addo came to power to wreck the nation. The Japadie is a grand scheme by Akufo-Addo to make some achievements more powerful than the Santis. This is very despicable, and that's why we need to vote the MPP government led by Nana Bawumia out come December 7, 2024 and vote for John Mahama to come and reset Ghana for us. And continue to say, in a serious state, the Minister of Attorney General, the Attorney General Minister of Justice should have resigned immediately. Dr. Atufosun was acquitted and discharged by the Court of Appeal. Looking at all that have transpired between Richard Jakpa and Godfrey Dame, Ghana is sick. The current government led by Nana Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia has made injustice and corruption their social interventions. Indeed, Ghana needs to be reset. Godfrey Dame must be ashamed and should resign now. In simple terms, Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia are wicked, evil, and heartless. And then this one before I come to Mr. Pratt. This is Dennis Yakwete who says, Honorable Kweku Kwarteng was right, except that sooner than later he may back off, as those 80 MPP MPs once did, because of the self and the reason the MPP must be voted out. Indeed, as Ghana goes to the polls on December 7, 2024 to elect a president, though everyone has the right to choose whoever he or she deems appropriate, as the one who understands the politics as service and not as lordship, choosing Dr. Bawumia will be a bad story for Ghana for reasons not far-fetched. In fact, a vote for Dr. Bawumia will not only mean sanctioning the continuation of the rot of corruption, narcissism, nepotism, and cronyism Ghana is currently suffering from, but will also mean securing one's mandate to paradoxically frustrate accountability of stewardship under President Nana Addo. Mr. Pratt.
Well, to start with, something is happening in the New Patriotic Party. And it is something of extreme significance. Except that it appears that it is not being noticed and discussed. Here we have a former Deputy Minister of Finance and Chairperson of the Finance Committee of Parliament, making the claim that the country's economy has been run like a Ponzi scheme. That's a significant statement. He is still a member of Parliament of the New Patriotic Party. But you see, he's not the only one. We have a former Deputy General Secretary, also of the New Patriotic Party, who only this week came up and said that the people of Ghana should forgive the government, the NPP government. Forgive the NPP government for what? And listen to what he says. He said many things, but listen to what he says. I'm a very principled and candid person. To a certain extent, I also agree with Kweku Kwarteng on the issues he has raised. If you go in for a loan and dig a hole or invest it in a national cathedral project, it is not a profitable venture. We don't need to use taxpayers' money to build a national cathedral. And he claimed that he was one of the people in the party who opposed the project. And he also claims that because of this stand that he took, he was denied appointments. Something is happening in the New Patriotic Party. Today, as we speak in this studio, Kwabena Japan, former General Secretary of the party, is following Dr. Bawumia around the country, urging people to vote for Dr. Bawumia. But go back a few months ago, when he was involved in the contest for the presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party. He gave testimony about how democracy, internal party democracy, was completely destroyed. How leaders of the party, members of the party, were hunted because of what they taught, because of what they stood for. This is Kwabena Japan, who strangely today is campaigning for the very people he criticized, has completely forgotten what he said only a few months ago. But he has given us an indication of what is happening in the New Patriotic Party. You understand? Now, listen to Dr. Nyaho Makro, a founding member of the party, and what he says about the party. Now, he claims that internal democracy in the party has been completely destroyed. That the party has been hijacked by a small group of persons with loyalty not to principle, but to an individual. It doesn't end there. Listen, the majority of members of parliament of the New Patriotic Party went public and told us that the economy was being mismanaged by the then finance minister and demanded that he should be removed from office. Something is happening in the New Patriotic Party. Everywhere you turn, listen to them. Look, Akompreko Kennedy, Japan. He said that members of the party were looting the national coffers as if there's no tomorrow. And there's more. Now, if these people, prominent members of the party, are telling us that there's no internal democracy in the party, one, They are telling us that decisions about national governance and so on today are being made by a cabal. That is their claim. Now, how would you entrust the whole country to this so-called cabal, which is intent on national destruction? And I'm not the one saying it. I am not the one saying it. Why would you do that? So I think it is important for all of us to take note of what is happening within the New Patriotic Party. What people in the New Patriotic Party are telling us. Only a couple of weeks ago, just before the launch of the outdooring of the vice presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Martin Opoku Prempeh, something very significant happened. The newspapers published a photograph of the current flag bearer do the proper analysis. Listen, Mr. Alhaji Martin, he was a cabinet minister, not an ordinary cabinet minister. Indeed, he was the Minister of Trade. He got so frustrated within the party that he's had to break away to create a new platform to contest for the presidency of this country. What pushed Mr. Alhaji Martin out of the New Patriotic Party? What pushed him out? He's speaking today. We should be listening to what he says. He was Minister for Trade and Industries. One of the flagship projects of this government was being implemented under his provision. One district, one factory. What happened to the one district, one factory project? Was he frustrated in the implementation of that project? What happened? So, you see, it is important for us. Don't listen to NDC. Don't listen to CPP. Don't listen to anybody. Listen to the voices in the New Patriotic Party and do your correct analysis. And I cannot forget my very good friend, my very, very good friend, Mr. Albert Kandapa, when he spoke to the judiciary and made the point that if every time the judiciary scores in favor of the sitting government, there is a problem, and there will be a problem. What did he see? Why did he make such a public statement? I think it is important for us to listen to these people in government. Listen to them in government and do your proper assessment. You see, what Mr. Kweku Kwatin says is a huge statement. He's talking about a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is essentially a 419 operation. And we have seen it here. You remember that just before the 2016 elections, there was a Ponzi scheme which broke out in this country. I think it was called DKM. You remember? Now, Mr. Kweku Kwatin is saying that that is how the national economy is being run. There have been several Ponzi schemes based on deceit, based on tricks and so on. But ultimately, the objective of every Ponzi scheme is to steal and destroy. And that's how he describes how this country's economy is being run. I'm frightened. And I think everybody should be frightened. His words are deep. His words are deep, and we need to reflect on those words. Now, he, former Deputy Finance Minister, not an ordinary person, not the Minister for Works and Housing, not the Minister for Information. Deputy Finance Minister is telling us that all that is done is that we borrow large amounts of money. We use part of the money we borrow, listen very carefully, to retire debts, the debts that we owe, and the rest, we use it, we spend it on projects which are not viable, which would not enable us to repay our debt. Is this not the path to complete national disaster? Because if you borrow, and you don't use what you have borrowed in order to stimulate production and productivity so that you can generate resources to repay your loan, but you use it simply to pay debts, you understand? Simply to pay debt, and to chop the rest on non-viable projects, that's the surest path to catastrophe, to disaster. And no wonder, today, Ghana is bankrupt. We are completely bankrupt. We are spending 128% of total national revenue on debt servicing, debt repayment, and public sector emoluments. That's a complete disaster. And if we continue to head in this direction, petroleum prices will continue to increase, the price of bread will continue to increase, the price of cooking oil would increase, the price of garri would increase, the price of maize would increase. Life will become unbearable for our people. And this is the warning which is being sounded. We need to pay attention to this grave warning coming from no less a person than Mr. Kweku Kwarteng. It is also significant that this man, this honorable member of parliament, refused an appointment in the last cabinet reshuffle. What has he seen? Why is he distancing himself? Because no matter what he says, whether it was an internal memo, external memo, or whatever, what he says is weighty and revealing. So I don't care whether he says it's an internal memo or not. He admits that he wrote what has been published. And what has been published is extremely alarming. My brother, lawyer Apia Dankwa, started by making a very valid claim about how nations are developed and so on. And I'd like to emphasize the point that no nation in the world, no nation anywhere has been developed by embarking on the path of capitalism. Never. Because essentially, capitalism depends on exploitation of others in order to accumulate surpluses for its advancement. So, the Western nations we see today, Germany, Britain, France, the United States of America, and so on, thrived in circumstances where they could exploit others to accumulate surpluses. The United States of America benefited essentially from classical slavery. You understand? When others were captured as beasts of burden and made to work for hundreds of years without pay. That is what led to the accumulation, which became the basis of the prosperity of the United States of America. Germany profited essentially from colonialism, where it captured other people's resources, their land, their mineral wealth, and so on, and used it for its own benefit. France today continues to profit hugely from colonial and neo-colonial exploitation. If you look around French-speaking African countries today, all of them without exception, are compelled to keep their foreign reserves in the Central Bank of France. So when France needs money to embark upon development projects and so on, it just takes money from French-speaking Africa for its development. It does not pay interest on it, nothing. When the African countries need resources for their development, they borrow their own money from France and pay interest on it. So it is this exploitation which enables France to somehow meet the needs and aspirations of its ruling elite and the middle class. Even with this level of exploitation, the working people of France, the exploited working class of France, is up in the streets on a constant basis protesting against their living conditions and so on. You take the case of Belgium. How did Belgium attain its current level of comfort and so on? You do know the story of King Leopold, who actually regarded the Congo as his private property. The Congo is one of the most resourced nations in the world. What doesn't the Congo have? Water resources, diamond, everything. You understand? And King Leopold regarded these resources as his private property. Indeed, at a time in history, Congolese nationals who were not able to provide enough rubber for the pleasure of Belgium and its king had their limbs amputated. If you were required to bring a certain quantity of rubber and you failed to do it, they cut one hand. Next time, they cut the other hand. This is how Belgium built its surpluses, which enables it to enjoy a certain level of comfort today. And we can go on and on and on. The reality is that the options available to the capitalist states is not available to African countries like Ghana today. So we have to stop and think. When they come here, IMF, World Bank, and so on, and these Western leaders come and say we should follow the example, do they tell us which people in the world we can go and capture as slaves to work for us for hundreds of years without pay? That option is not available to us. And even if that option was available to us, it would be against our moral values and our ethos as a people. So that option is not available to us. The Ponzi scheme option is not our option. Today, when they say we should follow the West and adopt capitalism, they should be telling us which people we can also go and colonize, steal their resources, steal their gold, steal their diamonds, steal their lithium, and so on, in order to facilitate our development. That option is not available to us. And because these options are not available to us, our leaders continue to deceive us, to give us hope where there's no hope, to continue with this Ponzi scheme that Kweku Kwati describes. And the Ponzi scheme would eventually crash. There is no Ponzi scheme which will last forever. It will crash. Borrow, use part of the money to settle old debts, use part of the money you have borrowed to engage in non-viable projects and so on. It will lead to a crash. So if you are not ready to stop and think, if you are not ready to examine the true options available to us, we will continue on this reckless path of neo-colonialist capitalist development and crash. Ghana has almost crashed now as we speak. If it continues into the future, God save us. Armageddon will visit us. Armageddon is what our destiny would be. Now, you see, What Kweku Kwati writes is something we should sit down seriously and reflect upon. And if we are to sit down seriously and reflect upon what he has written, it will lead us to major changes in our approach to development. Major changes. Look, it was in 1945, in Manchester, in the United Kingdom, that all the prominent leaders of Africa and Africans in the diaspora, the Pan-African movement, met and examined our conditions and came to a number of conclusions. One of the conclusions they came to was that we needed to free ourselves from colonial exploitation. We needed to embark upon the national liberation project to break the links we had with Europe and so on. 1. 2, they came to the conclusion that we needed to own our resources and to exploit these resources for our own benefit. And they came to the conclusion that we needed to unite Africa under the banner of scientific socialism. There is no better option than this option which was determined in Manchester. And indeed, if you look back to 1957 to 1966, you can see the tremendous progress that this country made, but it followed that path to development. And since we abandoned that path to development, you can see the crisis upon crisis that we continue to suffer. The African people, the Ghanaian people, have no option to the Nkrumah's program for national development, for the acceleration of the national development process, and we need to return to that. My brother Sena, I nearly said Suhini. My brother Sena.
I wonder why.
Oh, it's clear.
Last time I was on the show,
Interviewing the interviewer.
Constantly. Sort of said understandable.
Yes. My brother Sena, this is where we are. Look, not too long ago, in 2001, the Western countries came up and said, I'm poor. We build schools with HIPIC benefits imprinted on them and so on. Our condition today is worse than 2001. Our condition today is worse than 2001. HIPIC resolved nothing. It resolved nothing. And sometimes you wonder. I mean, I always make reference to what Albert Einstein has told us. Albert Einstein has told us that if you continuously do the same things and expect different results, you need psychiatric attention. And we have done the same things over and over and over again and expect the same result. We are always running to the International Monetary Fund for bailout. And after every bailout, our conditions become worse. And we continue rushing to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. What are the psychiatrists in this country doing? The psychiatrists in this country must be arresting our leaders and looking into their brains. Because they are doing the same things over and over again, and they're expecting different results. The psychiatrists have a job to do. This is the problem. You go to IMF, and in a country where one of the major problems confronting us is unemployment, and one of the conditions for the bailout is that freeze employment in the public sector. And you agree. You agree. So how are you solving that problem? In 1982-83, look at the disaster which befell us because we went to the IMF and the World Bank to teach us how to resolve our problems. We were told to retrench labor. In less than 1 year, we retrenched more than 300,000 workers. They lost their jobs. Is that progress? If you have a leadership who thinks that this is progress, my goodness, then we are in deep, deep trouble. They told us to privatize state enterprises, and we sold state enterprises like mad. We even went to the extent of establishing a divestiture implementation committee. Now, Sena, tell me today, of the 400 and so enterprises that we sold, how many survived? How many did well? Out of 400, today, only 2 are surviving. Only 2. Movenpick, Ambassador, and Golden Tulip. All the rest have collapsed. So this nonsense about the private sector being the engine of development has been totally discredited. We've handed everything over to private hands, and everything has collapsed except 2. And even the 2, tell me how they benefit our nation. Doesn't make sense. Now also take note, the people who are constantly telling us that the private sector is the engine of development, is the engine of growth, and so on. Anytime they take power, all of them run from the private sector like Usain Bolt and take over the state structure. All of them. So if the private sector is the engine of growth, if the private sector is the engine of development, why don't they stay in the private sector? Why do they always run to take over the public sector? Something is wrong. I am so very, going to say happy. I don't think it's the right thing to say. But I find it so extremely interesting that Kwaku Kwarteng has made these remarks. And I think that it's important for us to reflect on these demands. And we should not just reflect on these demands. This reflection should lead us to the adoption of a better model of development for our country.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you just join us, Madaba Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. And of course, we're just discussing the article written by Kwaku Kwarteng, who is a member of parliament. He's actually chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, former Deputy Minister for Finance. He wants a change in direction. It's an advice to the MPP, but sounds like it was doing an analysis of the country's politics over a period of time. We have to move on to another discussion. We don't have much time. The discussion on the decision of a Court of Appeal on the case against Dr. Kisela Tuforsen, the minority leader, Mr. Richard Jakpa, Big C Limited. The Court of Appeal has essentially brought that matter to a close. So there's no further hearings. The Attorney General is threatening to head to the Supreme Court this time around. On this one, I'll start with Mr. Kojuchumbuafo. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. You have a lawyer here, so
6 minutes.
He's the best person to explain to us what has gone on. But from an engineer's point of view, looking into law, Dr. Tuforsen should never have been taken to court. He acted on the instructions of his boss, the finance minister, who has gone to that same court to say, I gave him the instructions, so I'm the one you should be charging. But Tuforsen is simply being charged because he's the minority leader. He resisted the promulgation of e-levy, and there's a member of parliament here, so he will tell you what happened. And Tuforsen is in court for his fortitude, or was in court for his fortitude, and his resistance to the exploitation of the people of this country. You see, in 1982-83, Kwesi Pratt eloquently talks about what the then government tried to do, sending us to IMF. There was a young journalist, a lone voice, because at the time it wasn't easy to stand up against the government. There was a lone voice who stood up against the government on this IMF matter and predicted that we will get to where we are now. He was the person who stood up against it. Many of you were too young, and he got into trouble for it. He doesn't talk about it, but he got into a lot of trouble for it. At that time, it wasn't easy like we are sitting here having this discussion to have the discussions we're having. But he asked several questions and got into trouble for it. And I'm dovetailing this to Suhini. Suhini is a little disenfranchised about going to parliament. Sometimes he still wishes he was a broadcast journalist. Because when he was going to parliament, I was one of the people he spoke to. And I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. And I'll tell you what I told him. I told him that, Suhini, your people are asking for you to go and represent them in parliament. It is on the wings of what you have done as a broadcast journalist. If you don't go, how will you know whether you took a good decision or a bad decision? But Suhini, let me assure you that the decision you took is good. And I'll tell you why. At a point in time in your fledgling parliamentary career, you stood up against Joe Not So Wise and got into trouble for it. And what you did at the time set a course for the then NDC minority to challenge the government. If you remember, you were even removed from committees because you stood up against Joe Wise. So sometimes when you stand up against exploitation, when you stand up against authoritarianism, you may not think you have won immediately, but the repercussions, you empower so many people to stand up against that very authoritarianism. Let me finish by saying that, you see, my big brother, who we all look up to, said something about why going to places like the IMF is just completely useless. Do you know how much the IMF are giving us, this so-called the tranche they've given us, for which the finance minister went to have a party in London and spoke to us, talked down to us from London? You know how much they are giving us? $320 million. But Suhini, we spent so I've said it again. You see, he's your boss. We spent $250 million building a new headquarters for the Bank of Ghana. The same Bank of Ghana that has plunged this country in where it is by printing over 80 billion cedis worth of Kenofriata cedis. Right? We spent $250 million hosting All Africa Games. And the only medals we won were arm wrestling medals. Because the country is so hard, everybody's arm is taut. Right? We spent 58 million on that brown hole at cantonments called the National Cathedral. We spent 12 million, 12.5 on the Poalugu Dam. Right? Didn't we spend that? We spent 2 million on the Sky train that never happened. How much money have I counted for you? $590 million. So if we didn't spend that money in the manner in which we spent it, for which, and I'm talking about things for which we have absolutely no benefit. If we didn't spend that money there, and we spent it on a first-class highway between Accra and Tamale, wouldn't it have reduced accidents? Wouldn't it have reduced? Incidentally, our brother, the director of communication of the MPP, had a very bad accident on the Accra-Kumasi Road. If we had spent that money putting the first-class railway between Tema and Tamale, maybe you would have taken the train. You wouldn't have had that accident. But these are the things that Kwesi talks about. Because if you build a first-class highway between two of your two major cities, it spawns commerce. What is wrong with us?
Two comments on Facebook. This is Zachary Akibo, who says Nado has been corrupt for a long time ago in disguise, behind the scenes, and at the moment bathing it all together with family members and friends, groups of corrupt activities, and grabbing and looting everything that comes out their way, because already planned known agendas before grabbing power. Then Samuel James Aholu is asking, Kwesi Pratt, kindly tell us how much to pay for the tuition this morning. I'm really overwhelmed and learnt a lot from you. on the Atufo matter?
Yeah, so ordinarily, a judgment of any court shouldn't engender such political interest. Unfortunately, because of the manner in which this whole matter has been handled, the political twist to it, I think we've gotten to a stage where Ghanaians feel that the Attorney General himself must resign for the decision of the Court of Appeal. Now, I think it is quite trite, and you don't have to be a lawyer to understand that the criminal jurisprudence in this country dictates that you are innocent until proven guilty by a court of competent jurisdiction. That the burden of persuading the court as to the guilt of the accused always lies on the prosecution. That burden doesn't shift. Also, I think it is also quite trite that we have what we call burden of adducing evidence. That can shift, and usually that burden requires that you bring sufficient evidence to prove the existence or not of a fact. So, in a criminal case, usually because the burden of persuasion is always on the prosecution, it is the duty of the prosecution to bring evidence, or the burden of evidence is on the prosecution. No question has been asked of him to answer, and so then the matter has to be acquitted and discharged. I think in this case they did that. The accused, after the prosecution had finished his case, made that submission of no case, and the judge dismissed the said application. So they appealed, rightly so, to the Court of Appeal. However, while the matter was at the Court of Appeal, and whilst there was no stay of execution, the matter was being the accused opened his case. Certain information came out, which essentially threatened to turn this matter from being a prosecution into a persecution. Because there's a thin line. And because if you're Attorney General in our country, you're also Minister for Justice, and the burden is also on you, not only to deliver justice, because the burden to deliver justice includes a burden to be manifestly be seen to be delivering justice. So immediately you are put in a position where your prosecutorial duties are seen to be more of a persecution as against a prosecution. Then I think you need to have a frank assessment and see whether in the interest of the state this is a matter that is worth pursuing. I think that was the thinking of the judge when she asked the Attorney General to stand aside. I think when the matter came, some of us called on that AG to actually resign for the purposes of maintaining the trust the people of this country have in their judiciary. You get a picture. So it's because of all the politics, all the comments, it might be very unnecessary comments that were made, that has caused the people of this country to demand for the resignation of the Attorney General. Because like I said, other than that, a matter where a judge holds that there's no case for the accused to answer, it shouldn't cause this uproar. It's normal. You understand? It in no ways impugns on the competence of my view of even the Attorney General, because it happens all the time. Rather, because of the facts of the case, because of all the razzmatazz about the case and the information that we know now, the people of Ghana, even before the appeal court judge made the judgment, had cause to question whether or not this matter was a prosecution or it was a persecution. And so, as in, the time is fast spent. In my view, I think it boils down to leadership once again, political leadership, and what fuels your political leadership. Is it a call to serve? Is it a call to create that strong Ghana? Is it a call to fulfill the potential of this democracy that we choose upon ourselves? Or is it a desire to pursue your parochial party interest? You understand? And once you lose it, once you lose focus from that desire to use the power you have to build that one Ghana, and instead you go into using the powers of state, the powers that we have given you, to pursue an agenda that is in the interest of your political party or your personal interest, then you have no business being in that position. And that's why I still stand by my call. And I've said it and I'll say it again. I have huge respect for the Attorney General. I don't think his competence is in doubt. But he has undermined the relevance or the benefit of his position to the Ghana agenda. And because of that, I'll call on him again to humbly resign for the good of the country, for the good of this democracy that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Edward Baza says the ruling by the Court of Appeal is a relief to the Ghana Bar Association down to auto forcing. In fact, Governor Dami has disgraced the profession by his criminal activities. I am surprised that GB has not taken any action against the activities of the leader of the bar. In fact, I hear there's a discussion via the Bar Council about whether or not he should address the Bar Conference, among others. Alasan Suwini is a member of Parliament for Tamale North. They have been following the minority leader to court over the past few weeks before this decision was given. Honorable.
You know, Sena, when Kojo was speaking, he tallied a number of scandals. And what was the figure again? About $590 million or Ghana cedis.
Dollars.
I wanted you to repeat that. You know, earlier when I was speaking, I talked about the conscience in the NDC, and I gave some examples, and I was talking about the figures that were involved in some of the alleged scandals and the actions that were taken, and I emphasized the denomination, cedi. You know, the uproar that 3 million Ghana cedi in the bus branding cost in this country compared to what we are having now. I mean, this 500 million, you know, that he speaks of involving some of these alleged scandals. Do you know that the Tamale Teaching Hospital, phase 1 of that hospital was about 39 million euros? 39. The second phase was about 50 million euros. The UGMC that you see, that is getting international, you know, acclamation, was about $200 million. And so, when you have the president's daughter being awarded a contract to bring in ambulances, no, there are 2 contracts. Okay. The first one was to bring in ambulances, about 50 million. And then the spare parts, about $34 million put together. That is Tamale Teaching Hospital for you. Tamale Teaching, because first phase was about 35 million. Then the second phase about 49 million. That's Tamale Teaching Hospital for you. Saving lives, but in this case, saving a beloved daughter and friends. Sena, I'm starting on this note because for me, for me, it's not about how this case involving the Honorable Arthur Forson, the minority leader, is or should be one classical case of how not to politically persecute a political opponent. It's not about that. It's not about how the Attorney General, in the process of losing this case, lost his integrity and embarrassed the Ministry of Justice and the Attorney General's office. It's not about that. And it's not even about the courage that the judges involved in this case may have demonstrated, knowing fully well that this was a political persecution, as captured in the tape conversation with Jakpa and the Attorney General. It's not about the courage that the judges, you know, even showed in thwarting the political effort to imprison the minority leader so they can have advantage over their opponents in parliament. It's not just about that. even though it is commendable. But it's not about that. Some have said that it's because this is an example of how the judiciary is independent. It is not. It is one too little. It is commendable, yes, but that alone does not exonerate the judiciary from the widely held perception that it is under executive control. That one case alone is not enough to exonerate them. And this week I saw a report that talked about how many judicial arms of governments, especially in West Africa, or in Africa, are coming under executive control. So for me, it's not entirely about that. But it's about our governance structure and how it has been run by this government, led by this president and his vice president, now seeking a third term in office. You have a situation where we have a problem to resolve. So God bless his soul, the late Professor Mills identified the need to provide ambulances so that patients or people requiring attention, urgent medical attention, will no longer have to be transported in taxis and what have you. So the initiative to procure ambulances began. Vehicles were brought in. The contracting partner, in this case the government, examined the vehicles and thought that they did not meet the standard. And so therefore requested the businessman to do the right thing. And so the businessman brought in the equipments and other medical essentials that were aimed at making these vehicles meet the standard of operation. In the process, government changed hands. Governance is a continuum, not so. So the problem of transporting people requiring medical care is still with us, or was still with us. But this government's aim and focus in this case is to score a cheap political point and not to fix that problem. And even when they decided to act as if they were aiming at fixing that problem of transporting patients requiring urgent medical attention, the Auditor General reveals to us how they inflated the prices of the ambulances that they bought, whilst allowing the first ones that were procured, which attempts had been made to fix, to rot, so that it can make their case to politically persecute stronger. Now, through this, the common average Ghanaian is hit with a double jeopardy. You have one, the first ambulances that were brought in, rotting away, even though they have been paid with the taxpayers' money. The essential equipments that were brought in, allowed to rot at the port. Then the new government now coughs out more taxpayers' money to bring in ambulances at inflated costs and spare parts at inflated costs and award it to their relatives. Nepotism. And the common man, the man and woman who needs the services of these ambulances, are those who suffer. And the focus of this government is either to enrich their own or to persecute their political opponents. That, for me, is the crux of this matter. Okay. And I commend the Honorable Atufos, the minority leader, for standing his grounds and for being committed, because he was simply persecuted because of his strong stance against this government since his days as, ranking member on finance and now minority leader. Okay. And we give God the glory that at the end of the day, he stands vindicated. And I hope that many political activists will learn from this, that no matter how much they come at you, if you have your acts together well, you will stand the test of time, and at the end of the day, you will be vindicated. So I congratulate him and Jakpa for, their approach to this case. Okay. And I also commend the judges as well. But I think that the ordinary Ghanaian, in discussing this case, must not lose sight of how hard done, how insensitive this government has been to our plight when it comes to making available, readily available, emergency medical service to us by providing and supporting the process of making the ambulance service, more serviceable to our needs.
Thank you very much. Just that Service Ghana says it is not only car spare parts, they are also bringing medical equipment spare parts, so we should take note of that. Mr. Pratt.
You mean the in-laws?
Well, this is a very simple matter. And for me, the most important thing in this matter is that we still have judges who want to apply the law. We still have judges who refuse to be political. We still have judges who want to pursue the end of justice. That's the most important thing for me. Because we come to the point where the general population is losing confidence in the judiciary by the minute. So to have such judges of the Court of Appeal taking such bold decisions is most encouraging. And I like to salute those judges for what they have done to all of us and to the country. You see, on the substance of the case, I really feel sick that this case continued. One of the bases for charging Atufosin and putting him before court and so on was that he acted without the authority of his boss, the finance minister. So far, the prosecution has produced no evidence whatsoever that he acted without the authority of his boss. Indeed, his boss himself went to court and said, he did it on my authority. So why continue the prosecution? The other thing has to do with causing financial loss to the state. Now, what does the finance ministry do? When ministries, agencies, and departments and so on have projects, they cost them, they negotiate them and so on. They bring them to the Ministry of Finance for the issuance of letters of credit. The ministry is not the enforcer of the agreement. The ministry is not responsible for inspecting quality and so on. So let us assume that it is true that defective ambulances were brought. What is the responsibility of Atufosin? The only thing he did was that he issued the letter of credit. So what is his responsibility? In any case, the case being made against the ambulances, sometimes it sounds ridiculous. One of the cases is that some of the inscriptions on the buses were not spelled correctly. Hey, what is this? That the stickers on the buses had bubbles in between the stickers and the body of the bus. That the trolleys in the buses were too high or too low and something. That's the basis for carrying on the prosecution. Now, if this is the basis for carrying on prosecution, then everybody in this country will face prosecution. In any case, these defects could be corrected. You understand? They were deliberately not corrected. All we did was to rush to court and to secure conviction. What is this? And look at the scandals that have come out of this case. In any case, why put the agent of the company on trial for causing financial loss? The agent. That's a lawyer here. The agent of the company is the one put on trial for causing financial loss. I mean, this whole thing is so bizarre. So very bizarre. And I'm surprised that this case continued. What can I say? The judges of the Court of Appeal have made their point. And we salute them for their courage. We salute them for their commitment to principle. Now we are being told by the Attorney General that is going to go above the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. What can I say? Videbimus. Those who understand a bit of Latin, videbimus. You understand? We are watching. We are watching. We want to see what the Supreme Court will say. And what the Supreme Court will say would inform us. It will shape our opinion about the judiciary and so on. So we are waiting. What is this? Even in the banana republics, these things don't happen. Even in the banana republics. You have an Attorney General who calls an accused person before court and tells the accused person to go and falsify medical reports. And he continues to prosecute in court. An Attorney General telling an accused person to send false testimony, to give false testimony. And we tolerate it.
Ken Ofori-Atta can declare Nkonim of victory for several reasons. He went gambling with Ghana's finances by setting up a Ponzi borrowing scheme that simply took new loans to pay off old debt and allow some consumption. His main motivation was to make his cousin President Akufo-Addo's government look good, whilst creating opportunities for himself and cronies to cream off from the borrowings of compensation for their investments, and brought our conman Nana to the presidency. It's quite a lengthy message. And one from Ambassador Sampiale, who says, in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. Unfortunately, we have to bring this to a close today.